Persona 4 is a hell of a gem. It somehow manages to Frankenstein at least 5 separate things together, and still comes off as a positive experience. There were a lot of troubles during development, but weirdly enough it still came out fresh, even though it's basically just a reskinned Persona 3 under the hood. I really loved Persona 3, and it was one of the first games I reviewed on the channel, and that's because it really resonated with me. So naturally I had this obsession with Persona 4. I had no way to play it for the longest time, but then they released a handheld just for the enhanced version. Oh yeah baby, it's called the PlayStation Vita, and it costs $300. Now you might think that that might be like a death knell for the game, right? But something wild happened. The Atlas Defense Force started saying that the game was a godsend and that it was going to blow my mind and that I was going to come if I played it. Normally I don't pay for that sort of thing, but I mean they released a handheld just for Persona 4, so I mean there's bound to be other games, right? No. It's a $300 brick. Thank you Atlas fans for discouraging people from playing this on the original hardware. Sony was promising PS2 emulation and full PS3 remote play compatibility, which never happened. It was completely abandoned by Sony of America, but you'd still see a few games come out of Japan, and if you were lucky, they'd get translated too. But hey, now the game is on PC and we can finally answer the age-old question. Is this game worth $340? Most games aren't even worth $40. Come on now. Anyways, I'd like to talk about the game's main theme. The main theme of this game is identity, specifically about the twisting of the identity. So, they visit a lot of really interesting topics such as consumerism, media, and its effects on you and me. The game's very upbeat though. Someone working at Atlas has a very promising career as a politician awaiting them, as they're just fantastic at distracting me from the fact that people died. Hey, have you ever seen this paper about redesigning the Pepsi logo? The more you scroll down through this paper, the more it sounds like the schizophrenic ramblings of a madman as he tries to tie various iterations of the logo, past, present, and future, to genetics and the Mona Lisa. At the core though, this paper is about transcending the restrictions of mortality to make a version of the Pepsi logo that's so captivating it essentially brainwashes all of humanity into buying the product. I feel like the English version of the Junes themes kinda fails to live up to the original. It's just not as blatantly fake or as catchy. Anyway, this game's plot is all about media and its effects on people. This moment right here is innocent, but watching back over it really does stick out to me. Especially when you consider that most of the elderly are rightly afraid that Junes is going to put everybody out of business. But here you have this commercial, designed to get your attention with words that mean absolutely nothing. And the next generation is just too innocent to understand that they're being conditioned to be okay with it. It's an erosion of Inaba's identity, and for what? Cheap prices on cheap meat? Oh, and in case you've somehow missed out, this soundtrack kicks ass. And I mean almost every single track. I mean, Jesus Christ, they pulled out all of the stops. When Persona 5 was coming out, people were freaking out over the soundtrack like it was some kind of freak accident gone right.
This is too smooth, too damn smooth. Anybody ever recognize it like that? God damn!
Really? The two games preceding it had fantastic soundtracks, and I like them a lot more. I'm convinced that Persona 4 was just an excuse for a soundtrack to be made. The game shipped with a good portion of the soundtrack as a bonus CD, a little teaser for the full thing. The music is stellar. It doesn't fit the mood, it sets it. It makes a lot of events feel like there's more going on, and it elevates the experience a lot. They need a way to keep things from getting too bleak, and this is the best way that they do it. Oh hey, look at that goofball. Anyway, we get a nice introduction to our new friends, Yosuke, Chie, and Yukiko.
Kampai, you bitches! It's time for Nama Sensei's fucking Japanese lessons. You're gonna learn how to fucking speak and write Japanese. This fucking video fucking set. You bitch!
What the? I can't believe this! It's completely cracked! Oh, my trial!
Ah, Oh god. The new voice actors for Chie and Teddy suck. Teddy is fine for about half the game, but at some point his voice just becomes as grating as Chie's is. I don't know why so many actors decide to voice teenagers so obnoxiously, but she just goes way over the top way too often. She sounds like a hentai character getting around. There's just way too much emphasis on weird parts of the words that she's saying. I don't care if it's more fitting. The only thing that I want to fit into Chie is a sock. It's really unfortunate because I thought that I liked Chie's design, but then I played the game and she just looks terrible. I almost feel like I was deceived by hentai artists. I mean, it's almost as deceptive as Sony was, making people think that there'd be games on this machine. A lot of people like the cast, and I like them too for the most part. There's a lot of good moments in this game. It's sort of difficult to get across, I suppose, but there's a lot of warmth to be felt from the cast in some of these scenes. This is a bit of a double-edged sword though, because I absolutely despise members of the cast at points where they're trying to be funny. I guess I can attribute these feelings to the passage of time and personal life experiences. You see, I watched anime like Inuyasha growing up. It was my first anime ever, so it gets sort of a free pass in my nostalgia. You know, a pass for all the excessive abuse and filler. Jokes where a punchline is an arc into somebody's nuts. But it's not just Inuyasha. These jokes were everywhere, and there just comes a point where you just get so tired of it, you know? Usually the abused is the main character who's written to be hated, but no. They don't do that here at all. Instead, they beat up one of the only actual characters in the game, Yosuke. Anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't like most of the women in the party. The writing is lazy, and the women are being written to be abusive. It's uninspired anime garbage that was shoved down my throat during the early 2000s, but it's almost a decade late. This shtick was old by the time Urusei Yatsura finished. And while I'm at it, I'm not a fan of the shitty trope that keeps getting reused in these games either. Oh wow, it's so funny and quirky that women can't cook. You know, because their place is in the kitchen. Maybe it's just me, but I've never been stuck on the toilet laughing while my gut goes into Japan levels of tsunami. At least in Persona 3 they designate just one character to be the shitty chef. But here, Naoto is blessed by God himself, having gained insight into arcane knowledge that no mortal woman in Inaba possesses. The ability to read. But it's not like writing a character as a bad cook can never be done right. I actually like cooking, so from time to time I like to watch videos which I call cooking gore.
We're just trying to get it a bit softer. You can put some, oh shit. You can put some flammable stuff on it, like, you know, this thing.
The problem here is that the joke tends to be the end result. It's too formulaic. Why not just show some of them making the food in detail?
I'm going to be doing a different form of spaghetti bolognese.
There's far too much emphasis on people talking about not wanting to eat the food. It's just bad tropes from years ago. You would think that at least one character would get better by the end, but you have to keep in mind that not even a minuscule amount of growth is allowed in this game. Every single party member in this game is one-dimensional with zero growth, and honestly they're so flat that you could put them in a Disgaea game. It's really weird that they decided to recycle a lot of tropes and characters from the last game. We've even got the Junpei stand-in over here, you know, the character that has to act retarded so that the women can bully him. You know, like a joke. Like friends do! The reception on the characters is really vastly varying too. I've seen people say that they don't like Yosuke, which is really weird to me because he's the only character part of the main cast with conviction outside of Uncle Dojima. Even with the party's social links, I think that he's the only person in the entire cast that has even an iota of character growth outside of their introduction. Side characters have more growth, but it's fine. Persona 4 is all about just sort of chilling and enjoying life. So you have plenty of good characters that aren't a party member. I mean, this guy right here has more reason to be in the party than everyone who isn't Yosuke or Naoto combined. There's also a lot of side stuff to do like fishing, bug catching, and falling prey to sexual predators. In a really strange move though, Atlus decided to bully their own fan base and force them to do something that they'd never do in real life. Get a job. So yeah, there's a lot of really comfy slice of life content, but remember, this is a murder mystery. That's what it's marketed as, and that's the setup at the start. But honestly, I'd put murder mystery in quotations. It has a lot in common with Diamond is Unbreakable and Twin Peaks, where there's a lot of everyday life and wacky hijinks mixed in with supernatural murder mysteries. They also have unintentional funny moments in common. Every time I think things are getting serious, some shit like this happens.
He's beating off.
I'm about to come on.
Oh, he came. Oh, he fucking came. He did the DSP head throwback.
The characters are getting into wacky hijinks every other week, and every so often the game remembers that it's a murder mystery. There's a real problem with this too. The game's format is lifted straight out of Persona 3, and it doesn't exactly fit with the rest of the game at all. The slice of life aspect, sure, but it's at complete odds with everything else in the game. A good example of this is the gameplay loop, which starts right about now. Every month someone gets kidnapped, and every month you get a new party member, with some exceptions towards the end of the game. The way that we start this off is by discovering the Midnight Channel. So there's a rumor, essentially, that if you gaze into the TV long enough, you'll find someone who loves you. God, you might as well have just told them to be themselves. Anyway, whenever someone's face appears, that means that their one true love has appeared. Initially, we saw the first murder victim on the TV, but then we started to see Saki Konishi, Yosuke's coworker and crush. The connection isn't immediately apparent, but after we go inside the TV and stumble around, it becomes clear that something sinister is going on. Someone is throwing people inside of the TV, and if they stay inside when the fog gets too heavy in the real world, then they die. We also meet the mascot character.
It's a big headache. This world has always been like this.
Yeah, he knows a lot about the TV. Oh, and Saki is dead. Yeah. Anyway, it starts up the gameplay loop. Now your next party member is going to appear on the TV every month, and yeah, that's about it. None of these are handled very well. The entire plot has to be written like a Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, gee, the killer must be Sam Hyde or something, cause
You can't keep getting away with it.
a lot of the dungeons come off as formulaic filler, and as I mentioned before, none of it really adds anything to the story other than, being the latest excuse to do a dungeon. In the games prior to this, characters had conviction or didn't fill up the entire runtime with bullshit. In Persona 3, I'm not wasting time on characters that exist for gags. Also, this game has 2 less party members than 3, but I finished getting them all a full month later, and it's only because of the setup that they locked themselves into. The problem is that Persona 4 is writing itself into a corner. Persona 3's structure is ripped right out of the game, and Persona 4's writing is Frankensteined in. But in Persona 3, there's a reason for the month structure, there's a reason for dungeons, and the game never has overcomplicated plot threads for me to question. The only people that don't really belong in C's are Junpei and the dog. Everyone else is internally wrapped up in things that happen before the story begins, and actually feel like they have a place and a reason. Think of one single thing that any of these goofballs do in the story aside from their initial introduction. And for anyone other than Naoto and Yosuke, you should probably be pulling up a blank right about now. I mean, for Christ's sake, even this dog does something. Come on. I appreciate their place in the daily life, but I know that they could have done better with this because they have. As for this month structure, it winds up getting convoluted very fast. It muddles the mystery because they have to stretch the plot out by 5 whole months. It's not exactly groundbreaking that a new boss appears every month in Persona 3, but I'm not left wondering why the plot isn't progressing. Persona 4 gets messy because they add a human element into it, and I'm constantly asking questions that don't have good answers.
Why isn't it possible? It's just not. Why not, you stupid bastard?
Also, every question I have that does get answered is answered at the end of the game. That's at least 60 hours in. Again, let's revisit Persona 3. We have the goal of destroying the 13 shadows, and each one happens on a full moon. With every kill, you can see things getting worse after a period of them getting better. Character motives are never in question because there's actual peril. They also have mini mysteries, such as why is there a group that knows about the existence of the Dark Hour, and why does the Dark Hour exist? All of these are valid questions, and they all have equally valid answers. There's more than just one mystery out there, and it adds a layer of intrigue that Persona 4 just can't have, since every mystery has to be revealed at the absolute end of the game due to its structure. Also important is that Persona 3 isn't openly marketing these questions as something that needs to be investigated. There aren't 30-minute long scenes after every full moon where everyone just groups together to discuss why the Dark Hour exists.
How do you like that, Obama? I pissed on the moon, you idiot!
And God, this really is like Inuyasha. Just look at all this filler and how long it drags on. It's like watching Case Closed and waiting for Jimmy to get his body back. Nothing new is actually learned about the killer, and no one actually does anything shady in this game unless they're red herrings, which wouldn't be so bad if the game didn't explicitly state that they're red herrings to me. It winds up leaving the mystery part in the dark while all I have to look forward to is the slice of life. And while I do appreciate a lot of the slice of life moments, it really does get tiresome. It's a shame because I thought the concept was cool, and the game sells it pretty well at the start. I just think that it'd be a lot better if we had to narrow down suspects, but instead the dungeons are dedicated to me just getting more party members until the end of the game is near. There's so much that they could do, but they just can't because the entire game is a mystery that isn't getting solved anytime soon. I guess I'm just overly critical because the best parts of the game for me have to do with the killer, but 90% of the game has nothing to do with him, and the game is marketed as a murder mystery, not as a slice of life. Hell, even at the end it feels a bit thinned out because they finally add Naoto to my party, which means that they spam me with events involving the full party. Enough, please. I don't want people to get any ideas like I don't like this game though. This is one of the better RPGs on the PS2. I just can't talk about this game without comparing it to the game preceding it, and that's not good, because I like them both. I just like 3 more, and it's not just for the story or anything lame like that. Persona 3 has some issues, but I feel like people ignore exactly how much better 4 could have been. It's impossible to separate the two games. This game was made as a companion piece after all. I guess I've just become more critical over the years.
Are you fucking retarded?
I've grown older, and I've seen the things that Persona 4 is inspired by, which makes its impact weaker since I know that it could have been handled better. Anyways, let's take a break from all the negatives to just talk about how good this game is. The setting, Inaba feels so much more like a real place. It's much more lively and you can easily get distracted just taking it all in. It's easy to see why so many people love this game. You go to school, you hang out with your pals, and you have a really good time. And the whole time, really good music just won't stop grooving. I think that, aside from Chie and Teddy, the voice actors did a fantastic job. Yosuke, the killer, and Dojima did a great job in particular, and they absolutely sell the more serious scenes. Yosuke's range is impressive, and I appreciate seeing that level of quality in dubs. It's what makes me willing to give him a chance when a sub is also available. Hey, you know what's vital to just about any story? Making sure that the music lines up with what's happening on screen. I mean, just the other day I was playing RuneScape, and I had to level up my mining a bit. So I'm stuck in the mines for something close to 10 hours. I mean, this place is so depressing that they have to have NPCs here just to make it feel like I'm not in a death camp. And the whole time, I'm listening to music that makes it sound like I'm on a grand adventure. But it's just awful. It's just terrible because it sounds like I'm in Auschwitz and Disco Inferno is on blast. Anyways, this is important because Atlus decided to import its B team from Portable, so every so often, the music is just inappropriately cheery. But it doesn't matter because Dojima just kills it. This man, somebody give him a medal because they sabotaged the fuck out of him and he still pulled it off.
I've been scared this whole time. That's why I used revenge as an excuse to not spend time with her.
Dojima and Nanako honestly sell this game. They have a heartwarming bond, and seeing Dojima come out of his shell is very wholesome. I've heard people say that they don't like Nanako. People is in quotations. Nanako is such a beloved character that Atlus went through the bold decision to insinuate that the main character is in their spin-offs. Not a good track record there, Atlus. That's 2 protagonists so far. But I'm aware that I'm not exactly a professional on the matter, so I contacted someone in the know. Someone I can trust. Professional and Fire Emblem enthusiast, Roger Man.
Being a what? I mean, it's kind of hard for me, you know, because I'm not 100% sure if I think that's morally justifiable. However, I think he's a real player, and I should respect that part of him, even if I don't really agree with his motives, if that makes sense. Like, I just don't think that kind of relationship would be morally acceptable to do, you know? Cease and desist. I don't think it could be unless he like wasn't related. I mean, it's fiction, but yeah, but this is still a little silly, you know? Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's fiction.
One of the great things about this game is its commentary on how people are shaped by media, specifically TV. Hey JFK, what are your thoughts on TV's effects on humanity?
The number of mentally retarded is increasing.
Great. Just wonderful. I wouldn't stop there though. Things have only gotten worse. Now we have things like social media. Ah yes, the way that the world will end. Not with a whimper, but applause from Reddit. But that's just my Western take on it. You might be curious as to what TV is like in Japan. So let's see what YouTuber Abroad in Japan has to say about it.
Now imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, switch on the TV, and everyone is exceptionally happy. There's no criticism, there's no negativity, just everyone is happy and positive in an almost uncomfortably utopian manner. Wow, it's delicious, amazing. No other constructive criticism, no other comments, just blind, superficially positive statements repeated over and over and over as if someone was threatening him secretly off screen to act that way. And that is what Japanese TV is like, and for once, I am not exaggerating.
Yeah, it's even worse in some regards. But why is any of this relevant? Well, basically Atlus did a poor job and people just don't seem to get that the Midnight Channel was played up, even though the party's social links are suffering because of it. Almost every single one of their social links is getting to the root of these issues, and in some cases the character is just straight up changing their mind. That's how whimsical these issues are. Atlus is playing with a dictionary and fucking with the definitions, which they do explain to you at about the halfway point, in a very brief exchange. You gotta fight shadows to unlock your persona, so for a lot of people they understand that as repressed parts of the self. But really they're just played up insecurities. It's led to the issue of Naoto and Kanji being seen as trans and gay respectively, even though they're paired together in the base game.
Read, nigga, read!
I mean, it makes sense too, they share an insecurity and they make a cute pairing. Atlus could release a full-on video of him busting a nut in Naoto for the sole purpose of reproducing, full-on hand-holding and kissing, and Shinzo Abe, God rest his soul, he could be sitting in the corner nodding with approval as Japan's birth rate is single-handedly saved by Kanji, and people would still be calling him gay. I can't even call this paper thin because that implies that there's some kind of substance to the claim, which there's really not.
You are gay! The sooner you realize that, the better!
Japan has a completely different culture than us. They prefer cross-dressing and implications rather than outright saying that someone is gay.
I'm gay!
That's why you see a lot of borderline gay relationships in shonen like Hunter x Hunter. So I imagine that the employees at Atlus were hanging back, 6 hours past closing with no pay overtime, when one of them leans back in his chair after slamming down a beer. Hey, Takamura, you know why we call it transmogrify? Because they turn into a cop, then they laugh and they go back to writing Operation Babe Hunt. So do you really expect me to believe that the writers were thinking, ah yes, today I will make a gay and trans character? It's just not happening. The real mystery here though is how they managed to kill a bunch of black people in the 40s, hide the bodies in a cave, and then get away with it. Like they even named the cave descriptively, and nobody found out about it for 50 years. And then they struggled to even find the place until an act of God blew down the tree blocking it off. I mean, 50 years? A bunch of teenagers solved this case in less than one. What was I talking about again? Alright, social links. There's definitely some hard hitters here, almost none of them being party members though. It's almost insulting to call some of these social links. Thankfully, the overall quality has increased.
I'm old.
Some of them complement the story and most accentuate the themes of societal expectations. They also help solidify Persona 4 as a cozy game, and they remove jealousy, a mechanic which caused me a great deal of stress in 3. Unfortunately, they added one of the worst features in the entire series into the game, a mechanic which defies odds and manages to make me hate something that I love in real life. Rain. They also moved dungeon crawling to daytime, which, why? There's really not a lot to do during the night in Persona 3. I know that people give the stamina system a lot of flack, but what am I really missing out on? Oh man, I missed out on studying for a day or two. Big deal. Anytime that I go inside the TV, regardless of time spent, I miss out on everything. It's insane. Especially because Persona 3 has an in-universe explanation for why I'm tired. The Dark Hour is physically taxing on the body. It's why Makoto can run like he's Sonic. Dude gets a full workout during some time compression bullshit. Despite this outwardly friendly appearance that Persona 4 has going on, I'm being filled with stress and existential dread, far more than I am in Persona 3, and things start to get real frustrating when stacked against the calendar system, because I have an idea of when the game ends. I mean, I played the last game, so I'm just constantly counting down the days while the game fucks me and keeps taking days away for these events that I just do not care about, of which most of them are added in the golden version. And unfortunately, the clock is ticking. The hours are going by. The past increases, yet the future recedes. Possibilities decreasing. Regrets mounting.
You know, honestly, it honestly just felt like it was Christmas of 2012. Literally, time has flown by so fast. Honestly, it seemed like last week when I was just sitting here in, December of 2012, doing those Wing reviews, and it's honestly thinking back, it's kind of sad, to see how fast time flies by and how your life is just going by like that. I don't know if it's gonna get any slower. Every year, it's just, I don't know, not getting any better. I'll tell you that.
You're gonna fucking learn how to write 5 characters in Japanese. Those characters are the vowel sounds. They're always the same. Ah, E, U, A, O. If you don't learn anything from this motherfucking lesson, you're gonna learn how to talk like Donkey Kong. I-U-A-O. That's why he talks like that. He's a fucking donkey talking like that.
Oh, sorry about that. The game just, made me depressed is all. Anyway, on to something depression-proof. Using a combination of morals, personal taste, and just filtering out all the choices I've already made, I've narrowed down my future wife to just 2 candidates. I and Ayane.
I is love.
Ayane it is. Anyway, I'm dating down a bit here, but I think people tend to get really obsessed with this waifu shit.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
I mean, the main character is basically Chad Thundercock in this game. There isn't a single woman in this entire game that doesn't just completely thirst after him. I mean, even this old woman starts talking about how much you remind her of her husband. But I'm just tired of it, okay? I'm spent. I need a low-maintenance girlfriend. One that I know isn't gonna cheat. One that's gonna appreciate me for who I am. Anyhow, I've got a date lined up right now.
So, Senpai, sorry. I didn't want to start the new year on a bad note. I was putting on my kimono when my dog tackled me.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
What the dog doing?
If they don't go out with you, who gives a motherfuck? This place is so full of bitches.
No, I'm done. Social review, over. Let's talk about something that matters. Something with a bit of bite to it. Combat. They overhauled the hell out of it. I mean, it's mostly the same game, but they streamlined it. Full party control, no fusion spells. There's only one physical attack type. Poor Kanji is suffering from this since he just winds up being outshined by Chie. I mean, even his ultimate technique kinda sucks. Everyone else is getting skills like Gigasuck 7, which does everything that the emails in your junk folder promises and more. Kanji gets to waste 30 SP for a chance to knock down enemies. Wow, what a niche ability that isn't anywhere near as universal as getting Cadenza as a normal spell. Hey, you remember those party social links that I mentioned? Yeah, there's a reason to do those. Leveling these social links up has a variety of gameplay bonuses. Your allies are better in combat, they can help you out, take blows for you, survive lethal attacks. But none of that even matters because Rise just comes out and invalidates the entire fight. I actually tried to die once because I wanted to reload after a mistake, and it was probably the most difficulty that the game ever gave me. They also have team synergy skills that follow up after all-out attacks. It all just works together to make the game incredibly stylish and keep things fresh. I also like the new shuffle system. Instead of making you pick a card after, well, shuffling them, you now get a hand dealt to you and you have to pick a card. Simple initially, but with some luck and thinking, you can potentially clear out the whole hand, giving you a variety of bonuses as well as an advantage to your next shuffle. What else? What else? Oh, they fixed one of the biggest issues from the last game, fusion. At a glance, you can now see what personas that you can fuse together from what you have on you. You also don't have to deal with RNG. It's a nice addition that stops people from getting too bored. With this though, comes one of Persona 4's biggest faults, as I can no longer use the Velvet Room as sleeping aid. Anyways, that's the combat. Not really much has changed here. A lot of quality of life, really. As I stated in my previous review, I enjoy the combat, and this is more of the same. What they did change though was dungeons. Instead of this randomly generated tower, we now have randomly generated TV dungeons. It's kind of like a mixture of Tartarus and the full moon sections, and honestly, I fucking despise the changes. A lot of changes had to be made to dungeons to accommodate everything that they added or changed. There's just something so universal about going into a dungeon and opening chests. But through some divine fuckery, Atlas was able to contact the one true god and ask them how to fuck it up. And that's how you get these CBT chests that require keys. But honestly, there's nothing even in these chests besides accessories because of the new equipment shop mechanics. Can't undermine those. A lot of thrill is just lost when dungeons are handled this way. I just don't understand why they made a conscious effort to make the dungeons worse. They also made a lot of dogshit changes in order to circumvent the complaints that people have about Persona 3. But the issue is still there. In fact, in many cases, it's worse. Worst case scenario with fatigue, I go home for the night and I can't study the next day. No big deal. Every single time that I want to heal, I am charged my entire life savings so that I can return to the dungeon and overlevel myself, since the best methods of making money have been completely stripped clean from the game. This game might be Japanese, but its hospital fees are American. I mean, just imagine if I was playing on the hardest difficulty. Another difference is that it is now impossible to get a reasonable amount of money without killing Golden Hands, enemies that now also give you a ludicrous amount of EXP. The game wants me to pretend that I'm in high school, but they're treating me like I just finished my college degree in liberal arts during the Great Depression. Also, the quests in this game are some of the worst that I have ever encountered in any game ever. You are more likely to catch Bigfoot out in the wild and help him find the second coming of Christ than any of the monsters required for these dogshit quests. All of these issues make the gameplay worse if you ask me, but I'm aware that I'm in the minority here. A lot of these issues will not bother you if you didn't like or play Persona 3, I'm sure. But to me, they just diverted people's attentions away from all the issues and then just made them worse under different names. But despite the issues that I listed, the gameplay was still enjoyable for me, even if it invokes feelings of frustration. Oh, would you look at the time, it's now time to talk about the rest of the story, so if you don't want to be spoiled, leave. So yeah, not a lot happens for the first half of the game in terms of developing the murder mystery. The game is starting to suffer from some pacing issues from all the bloat. Every other week it's like Ernest Goes to Afghanistan. Hey, did you know that Persona 4 was, according to interviews, done without any sort of documentation? You're usually supposed to write shit down about the game that you're making, detailing everything that you want in it. But according to the director, in a very unusual move for them, they just decided not to because they already knew what was going into the game. I like this next part of the interview. Hashino also jokingly revealed that they would never make that mistake again. They've also gone on record saying that they have no experience writing a plot like this. Yeah, I think that this explains a lot. Like, imagine if I just didn't know how to transition into this next part of the review.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
And instead I just started talking about something completely unrelated, like early YouTube. It really was like a Wild West of sorts. It was a time period where you could just open up a video from your favorite creator and, you know, he'd just be talking about some crazy drama that was going on.
Meet White Emerald 91. He's 17 years old, and his interests include watching Naruto and exercise machines. All of this started from my fucking video about how to save your beer from a cigarette, which is a good fucking thing you can do. It was at this time that the motherfucker started sending death threats to me in my private messages. Why? I don't fucking know why. He's a 17-year-old kid with no fucking thing to do with himself. The next day I got another fucking message. I can fuck you up and cut your neck up, and I will sell your neck on eBay and make a profit. I will cut up your ass, bitch. So shut the fuck up, because I live in Harlem and me and my boys can blow Japan up, pussy, and Naruto is dope. Join me on a journey into the imaginary world of this fucking dude. Look at what his fucking imaginary life is like. I'm sorry that I did not make this fucking drawing douchey enough to actually reflect the motherfucker. I tried really hard to draw the douchiest fucking drawing I possibly could. So anyway, here's what it'd fucking look like if this dude actually did sell my neck on eBay. What the fuck?
No-life nerd who's never gotten pussy before in his entire life.
Oh, this is bad. Kanji's useless. Kanji's useless. Kanji's useless. Kanji's useless.
Anyhow, this is our first red herring. The entire time, this game's been just screaming at me that this isn't the killer. I mean, I know that Naoto isn't in our party yet, but, you know, I could have figured that out on my own. Speaking of Naoto, I think that it would have been better if we got her here. I mean, it makes perfect sense, and not every party member is getting dungeons anyways. The Midnight Channel is broadcast to all of Inaba after all. And there's a plot point later on that basically explains that anybody could have gotten a persona. The premise has so much untapped potential, and instead of doing anything with it, they just throw me another dungeon with a party member. Come on now. Anyways, this leads into a plotline about how the police don't actually give a shit about who the killer is because they're getting so much flack for not catching him already. It leads to our first red herring being thrown in jail. Case solved, except we've got another red herring to catch. You see, we got a letter in the mail telling us to stop saving people. Real ominous stuff, I know. It's actually kind of spooky when something interrupts your feeling of safety. When you feel like the main character actually has something on the line and that things can go wrong. So, I like this section. I have an emotional attachment to what's going on in game, but I don't like everything surrounding it. You see, a while after getting this letter, Nanako gets kidnapped. And even though this whole section's a bit cheap, I'm just instantly invested. With some talking it through, we managed to deduce that people have been getting vanned. This is probably the greatest discovery that anyone's made thus far. It's almost as if Naoto joined our party, because we're too stupid to solve the case ourselves. You know what though? I actually like this. I like all of this. Man, the coloring here just really doesn't stand out enough, and it looks like Adachi is so powerful that he can phase through doors. Anyways, it turns out that a guy named Namatame has been doing the kidnapping. He's been mentioned multiple times throughout the story up until this point, and at multiple points, you're told that he's basically been crossed off the suspects list. Dojima is such a Chad. He gets hospitalized and the game is really touching in a way that it probably wouldn't be had I not completed both his and Nanako's social links. I also really like this dungeon. It's my favorite. I mean, Nanako is young, and the music playing is all about her relationship with her mother's passing. It actually feels a little bit like I don't belong here. But this dungeon isn't just Nanako's. It's Namatame's as well, and the dungeon is basically illustrating the type of place that Namatame sees the Midnight Channel as, a paradise. And this is where all of my problems with the story just kinda stem from. You see, Namatame isn't the killer. Namatame is just retarded. Through a mixture of chance and just pure retardation, Namatame has been subtly manipulated into kidnapping people. You remember how the first two victims appeared on the TV, and that they died? Yeah, due to a mixture of ours and his actions, it just so happens to perfectly line up in his mind that if you throw people inside of the TV, they won't die. And the entire first half of the game is a complete accident. let that sink in. It's all a misunderstanding. I just don't like this. I don't like Namatame as a plot device. I mean, I like what came out of it, but this revelation has completely tainted the entire first half of the game for me in a way that has made repeat playthroughs just less enjoyable. There's a bad ending that you can get here too. Everyone is fucking pissed at Namatame because Nanako is dead, so they're about to throw a reason to the side and toss him inside of the TV. They just don't know what we know yet. You actually have to talk some sense into everyone, and if you mess it up, Nanako stays dead. Yeah, that's right, she comes back. And we have to figure out who the real killer is. There's just one problem with that. Everyone and their mother knows who the killer is. It's like knowing that Eris dies. I mean, I knew who the killer is before I even touched Persona, but the answer isn't exactly a hard guess. They give us a list of candidates to pick from, and not a single one of these fuckers fits the bill. You can guess that it's Adachi on meta information alone, such as him being the only character part of the main story who could have done it. Or, you know, just the fact that he keeps appearing whenever we start talking about the case. Yeah, this guy is real killer material, really making me think that it could be somebody else. Some people say that it's better because they give him a social link in Golden, but that's where I call bullshit because I own a tarot deck, and that shit ain't in it. I checked. But hey, all this wasted time, all this bullshit, none of it matters. And that's because Atlus comes out with a home run, baby. Enter Toru Adachi, Slayer of Thoughts, whipping out his ultimate weapon, a fan favorite, gun. That's right, Adachi was the killer the whole time, and I gotta say, I love Adachi. He's basically the absolute lowest that you can get, a bastard that kills because he can, because it's fun.
Games like this gotta have surprises or they get boring fast.
This entire time you've been fighting manifestations of shadows, things that people would rather look away from, the subdued nature of man. Yet here's Adachi, a man so subdued that he lashes out, having let his feelings ferment for far too long. Adachi is the perfect villain because he's just a normal guy. Anybody could be in Adachi's shoes. But even though they pinned the whole thing on Adachi last second, I have to say, it's a perfect fit. I just can't imagine another antagonist being as interesting. Adachi just has an energy not present anywhere else in the game. He's a real show stealer, and that's why you'll just see people saying that he did nothing wrong. He's so much of a god that when the rest of the cast stumble as to why what he did was wrong, I couldn't help but just want Naoto to shut up.
You are
What?
an adult man.
What?
You are a full-grown man.
What?
You should know not to harass
What?
children.
These people deal with such surface-level baby bitch problems that they make Tumblr look like starving Africans. So when Adachi comes in and says, "Yeah, I killed that whore, and it was fun," and absolutely destroys any chance of a rebuttal from the half-a-person squad, I cheer. Adachi is more of a character than any of these dorks because he's a shining example of what this game is trying to warn us about. Women. Look at Mink Little Yosuke. Look at how he's mercilessly bullied by women. Don't you think that his life would just be better if we had never saved Chie and Yukiko? I mean, think about it. All the gastrointestinal issues these women have inflicted is bad enough on its own. See, if Adachi was involved, he would have at least called one of them a bitch and pushed them inside of the TV. In short, Adachi is the hero we all need, but do not deserve. An apex predator, at the very top of the food chain. He is the reactive element to this game's stale breadline of story content. Explosive, daring, handsome. Women can't help but fall for him, inside of the TV. Even better is that Adachi possesses mind-boggling destructive powers, such as the ability to turn Inaba into California, a disgusting cesspool that slowly kills its inhabitants. If I can stop fucking around for a moment, Adachi really is the best character. The main cast is basically full of surface level problems. Adachi, however, is the real thing. It makes the confrontation that he has with the group a little bit off-putting, as these are flat, two-adjective characters confronting a real human being. Anyways, there's 5 endings, and I'm not gonna go into specifics, just I think that ending the game after confronting Adachi would have been better. The true ending has yet another god show up, and the golden ending forces someone's deviant art character into the mix. You have to do one of the worst social links in the entire game for it.
Autism him, in a nutshell?
There's a number of things that aren't typically listed as changes for Golden, and while I do appreciate that I'm not being suicide bombed back an hour or so,
Stop, supposed people! What I tell you, stay out of my hallway!
the new stuff feels like an intern made it. Also, while I'm happy that there's a speed up button, why isn't it a skip button? Looking around for all the changes, I ran into a claim that 50% more dialogue was added, which is really funny to think about because the entire time I had this feeling that they should just cut the dialogue in half. Aside from Adachi's stuff, the new dialogue does not add a single thing. So it's really weird looking back and seeing that people recommend that you buy a $300 dead-in-the-water machine to play this game on. The PlayStation 2 is one of the greatest consoles of all time. They released banger after banger, back to back. It was a golden age of gaming. Companies could just make games that looked like a coloring book and it was cool as hell. To suggest a veto over a PlayStation 2 back then was insane. No game is worth $300 plus the cost of a new game, let alone a port. Anyways, to sum up my thoughts on Persona 4, it's a good game with a lot of personality, but it was unfortunately poorly handled and it weirdly feels like it's unironically trying to be the things that it's critiquing at times. A lot of its deeper and more interesting ideas are left on the back burner, but it has a lot of great moments and playing it leaves me with a warm feeling, but a hunger for the level of care that they put into Persona 3 structure and characters. It's very much its own game, but it often feels rushed and underdeveloped, leaning on many of the things that the previous game set up without offering enough to blow me away and say that it was definitively better, or even on par with Persona 3. I think that it's aged incredibly well, especially with how things have deteriorated in recent years. With the news flashing all of this chaos in your face, it's easy to forget that the world is full of good people and good things out there. And that's kind of what Persona 4 is all about, dressed up as a murder mystery. Getting out there and having fun with the people that you care about, and living your life to the fullest. Hey, it's the end of the video. Time to kick back and just talk to you guys once again. Long time no see, huh? It's been over a year, can you believe it? I had a lot happen, which put the review on hold for a while. And even then, this is my longest review to date, and definitely the one I worked the most on. My thoughts on the game wound up being a bit more negative than what I was expecting, and I tried to tone it down a bit, but I still had a lot of criticisms. A couple of times I wondered if I should even go through with the review, but I'm a man of my word, and I told you guys that I'd review it, so I went through with it. It was a tough decision, and it took a lot of time, but I hope you enjoyed it, even if you don't agree with me on everything. I promise I'll work on something more positive in the future. Next up on the chopping block is my favorite game of all time. The day after this goes live, I'll have a video and a poll accompanying it to ask you guys some questions. If you like the review, feel free to share it around. Knowing how my last Persona review went, yeah. Also, if you're going to leave a comment, feel free to censor yourself a little, as even a friend of mine whom I've just completely allowed free reign in my comments section is getting his comments shadow banned because he's saying mean words that I definitely don't know are a joke and need protecting from. Anyway, it's been fun. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.
Little clip just shows the inner machinations of his mind at all times. Yeah, just like a peek into his brain. This is just it. Yes, like if you look into my brain, you'll see these. You'll see this. You're a better commentator than me, so you could probably word it better, but okay. I'd be honored to be in your YouTube company.